I'd just like to welcome everyone to our annual Poetry, Art, Music event. And you've been listening to the wonderful jazz guitar of John Timmons and Heaven O'Neill. And now you're going to be able to enjoy some flute duets. Paula Baird, Tracy Norkun, who Paula is a ESL faculty chairman here, and some of you know her. And Tracy, I'm told, is a graduate of, not exactly a graduate, but ESL certificate award. Liberal arts. She is a graduate. Okay, welcome. I got to get everybody's credentials straight. Please continue to grab some food and walk around and look at the artwork, which is done by the Drawing 1 and 2 classes of Jim DeCesare, an art adjunct, and also the electronic painting on the back wall over there by the students of Jacqueline Decker. And in just a little while, we're going to be hearing Benjamin Grossberg, our keynote guest of honor, poet, Connecticut Poet Touring Contest winner. So without further ado, just welcome, help yourself to everything, and Paula and Tracy.
In the whole world where I was born and raised, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard it. It's called Gloucester, Massachusetts. It's Cape Ann, and it's on the north shore of Massachusetts. A beautiful, beautiful place. Am I not?
No, it's okay. Just point it that way.
Point this way.
No,
towards you.
Me? Okay. Thank you. Gloucester, my Gloucester. I cannot think of a nicer place, or so it seems to me, to sit and dream on a sunny day than in Gloucester by the sea. The salt sea smell of the ocean, the walks on the sandy shore, the plaintive cry of the seagulls that blend with the ocean's roar, the billowing sails in the harbor as they break in the sun of the bay, the towering spars of fishing smacks that return at the end of the day. Oh, sing you songs of the hillsides, of mountains and lakes fair to see, but for simple contentment, give me Gloucester by the sea. The lights in the harbor twinkle as the darkness brings to me a glimpse of a lovely picture that is Gloucester by the sea.
As you saw, had a couple of guitarists up here too. I can't guarantee I'm that good, but I'll give it my best. This is You and Me by Lifehouse. Whoops. Just kidding. What day is it? And in what month? This clock never seems so right. I can't keep up, and I can't back down. I'm losing so much time. 'Cause it's you and me, and all of the people with nothing to do. guess.
It
I'll
was
just,
great.
Not used to people staring.
You want us just to walk by and just leave it at
Well, that would be natural for me, I guess.
You're that good, you gotta get used to it. It's good.
Okay, sorry. All of the things that I want to say, they're just not coming out right. I'm tripping on words, got my head spinning, I don't know where to go from here. 'Cause it's you and me, it's all of the people with nothing to do, nothing to lose, and it's you and me, it's all of the people, and I don't know why, can't keep my eyes off of you. Something about you now, I can't quite figure out, but everything she does is beautiful, everything she does is right, 'cause it's you and me, it's all of the people with nothing to do, nothing to prove, and it's you and me, it's all of the people, and I don't know why, can't keep my eyes off of you and me, it's all of the people, nothing to lose, nothing to prove, and it's you and me, it's all of the people, and I don't know why, can't keep my eyes off of you. One day is it, and in 1 month this clock never seems so right.
Most recently, his collection, Sweet Core Orchard, from which I believe he's going to be reading this evening, was winner of the 2008 Tampa Review Prize, and also achieved a Lambda Literary Award. This has been described as a brave, unabashed, at times theological, and utterly exuberant collection of poems with a sweet, wild energy at its core. I like the sweet, wild energy part. Space Traveler, his third full-length collection, will be released in 2013. His poems have appeared widely in literary journals including New England, North American, Paris, Southwest, and Missouri Reviews. When he has finished reading this evening, he will be here in the front of the hall to sign any books. If you would like to purchase any, they will be here. And at this time, I'm going to call up Ben.
I want to start by thanking Sandy. This is such a lovely event. I don't know if it's customary to give her a round of applause for her work. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm going to be reading poems from my book, Sweet Core Orchard. And I wrote a lot of this book in Ohio. And the very first poem I'm going to read is about a regular pastime in Ohio. It's about the county fairs. If anybody's ever been to Ohio county fairs, I think, are just a wonderful thing to do. And this poem I wrote after going to a county fair, and they have animal auctions, and watching in this case, a pig auction, and having this sinking feeling by the end of it that, like the fate of humankind was somehow pictured before me. That this wasn't just a pig auction, this was like the human condition writ large. And that's what this poem is about. There are some parts of this poem that are in italics, that are in the voice of an auctioneer. So when you hear me speaking kind of fast, That's me attempting to do an auctioneer. So, pig auction. 3 quarter, quarter, do I have half? The boy steps aside, and this one, a barrel, pinkish in the hind quarters and brown in the fore, trots out in front of the auctioneer, who says a few words. Perfunctory, he speaks much too fast to be understood, before soliciting bids. The pig, meanwhile, struts its hour, walking back and forth below the podium from which all that sound about it blares. Struts? No, the pig doesn't strut. The pig, in fact, with its curly tail and flat-topped snout, is oblivious to all but the boy, following him as he circles, waving his yellow pennant first this way, then that in the small pen. Picture this, a tent, 200 spectators on 3 sides, auctioneer on a dais, his voice tripping along between speech and song, and in the dirt pen in front of that dais, pig. Yes, there are helpers too. There is the boy who shepherds the pig. There is a man in a cowboy hat who points and gestures at people in the audience confirming bids. 3.75, 5, do we have 4? Do we have 4? But finally, focus is on the pig and its prospects. From the sidelines where we stand, I suggest we root for the pig. But you tell me that the pig, its future in show, breeding, or pork, most likely a combination, needs no help in rooting. I turn back to the pen, unconvinced, because the odds seem stacked against it. The reason? Auctioneer, voice tripping like water down a rock face. The auctioneer with his hands raised now, conducting the event like a symphony. He culminates the audience to his bidding, pulls the shepherding boy with his left hand, nods and throws meaningful glances at the man in the cowboy hat, maestro conducting with a curly wand. The auctioneer is the father looking coldly down on the auction of the world that he creates with an extra-natural fluidity of speech, incarnates with each trilling syllable around the sole subject, pig, shepherded back and forth before spectators it doesn't understand. Does it? Now the shepherding boy and the man appear as angels, their expressionless faces enacting bliss. What does that make the cackling spectators? I become convinced as we watch, though you are silent, though you are clearly interested in moving on and seeing other things, that with its pink half and its brown half, its cloven hooves, that barely known to this pig, the auction is an adversarial relationship. And if so, what hope for the pig? The auctioneer bangs his gavel. Sold for $3.75 to... From the bench, he sentences the pig to the gallows. The bailiff shepherds it off. Is it mercy, this pig's ignorance? All the machinery operating around it? Who's to say the auctioneer isn't a scientist, and the pig moving back and forth on a glass slide beneath an eye larger than the sun? I understand you want to see cows, sheep, the rows of rabbit cages, but there will be nothing that we see here all day that will be truer than this. And look, another pig. The auctioneer up there gets ready to say grace as this pig hustles onto his dinner plate, this one with red spots, and now the auctioneer is at it again. Y'all should be, don't feel compelled to clap after every poem, though it is lovely. In general, in poetry readings, your hands will get kind of worn out, so it's okay if you don't. So in Ohio, I also lived in an apartment house. Are people hearing me okay with the crackling? I know it's a little distracting. People doing okay? Okay. So I lived in an apartment house, and this next poem is about the apartment house I lived in. I don't know if any of you all have had a lot of experience living in apartment houses, but I was really struck by how we get to know the people who are our neighbors in an apartment house much more intimately, I think, than in the suburbs. So this poem is called In Memoriam, in memory, of Ginger, and it's about one of my neighbors. In memory, in memoriam, Ginger. Ginger, who I did not like to look at or talk to whom I was polite only by an act of will, is dead and gone. Vacant now, her apartment, the only one in the basement, by the laundry and the small storage cubbies that the landlord throws in free. I saw the ambulance, noticed it a few weeks ago when I shut my lights for sleep, blue and red flashing through the blinds. I looked out to see Ginger's daughter, apartment 3, other side of the building, walk doggedly back and forth on the lawn, from her apartment door back out to the curb. I didn't know then it was for Ginger. Ask not. That knowledge came later, when I told Aileen, first floor, decorates the hall for Christmas, Easter, the seasons generally, plastic snowflakes, that kind of thing, that she looked nice. Aileen said it was for Ginger, the funeral held earlier that morning. I wondered why I hadn't been invited, but then I remembered that Aileen is kind to everyone, and that I, a snob, had rejected Ginger. My difficulty with Ginger wasn't due to her weird body, though that bothered me, her weird breasts hanging down nearly to her waist. I'm not saying this was her fault. Or her laugh. I want to write cackle. How loud it was. How I could see when she laughed that her teeth were cracked, blackened, that her middle-aged gums had burned out spaces. The landlord once tried to evict Ginger for having a cat. The whole building was up in arms because others had cats too. I'm the only tenant with a dog. I didn't get involved. Even though the entire basement, laundry area, cubbies, smelled like her cat box, the landlord eventually relented. But none of this especially disturbed me about Ginger, certainly not enough to hope she'd be forced to leave. No, the problem was her speech. The way she spoke set my shoulders up, made me back away nearly instinctively, as from an object that cast my own humanity into doubt. Ginger slurred her words incredibly, tortured and twisted each word out of her mouth, each syllable like Blake's tiger, violently hammered in the furnace of her gullet. At first, I thought it was an Ohio drawl, but the more I heard it, scraping chalkboards, sonorous by comparison, the more I realized it was all Ginger and no Ohio. I'd never heard anyone do that to language before. No alcohol, no organic instigation that I could see, just Ginger, opening her mouth hugely, gaping her mouth like a cavern at dusk, delivering a nearly unending stream of bats. The deep, cavernous mouth guarded by only a few shards of teeth. It was horrible. I kept my eyes down on the washer when she spoke, my hands on the machine as if feeling for psychic contact with the laundry. I didn't understand a word she said. I thought to ask Pat, second floor across the hall from me, clutters the area outside her door with boxes of scarves, how Ginger died. Pat wouldn't judge me for asking, even though it's not my business. Or is it? These people with whom I live, whose sounds I know nearly as well as my own, whose business if not mine? The woman whose living room abuts my bedroom, I know what she sings to help her baby sleep. She knows the universe of pet names I have for my dog. What could be more embarrassing than that? No more awkwardly intimate or unchosen than those people into whom I was born, though here with a surprising element of tolerance, except for Ginger, who I did not tolerate, unless avoidance too is a brand of tolerance. Maybe tolerance's last resort. Ginger's door has been left open. She died mid-month, so her clothes, her things, have the space a few more weeks. After that, someone new will come, and with or without effort, that person will know and become known, will enlarge this thing that isn't a family, that is both more and less than friendship, our daily, unacknowledged intimacy. How odd that it could be anyone. But that's for later. Now the apartment is still Ginger's, the empty space a collective, if temporary, testament to her memory. I can see quite clearly inside, her things half packed in boxes for Goodwill, the undusted, closed blinds. Almost nothing, finally, of whatever it is that Ginger was. Mother and tenant, I guess. Maker, if nothing else, of a sound that has vanished from the world. In this book, there are a series of poems in which I imagine the afterlife, and I'm going to read, maybe I'll read one or two of them, and I'm going to start with one of them now. And this poem is called, if I can find it. It's like the pages in the book get shuffled when you're not looking. You know, it doesn't work like that, but it seems like that. This poem is called Cocktail Party. Because who knows, it could be like that, right? We don't know. Cocktail Party. I wouldn't be afraid of dying if there were a mere 4-hour event. Drinks, let's say, hors d'oeuvres, at the end of the world. I would arrive early if possible, wearing shoes that peg me for the early 1990s and the nice things I hope they bury me in. I get my drink, vodka soda, lime, grab a full plate of grapes from the fruit trays, fresh off those vines still growing at the end of the world, then begin my rounds. The first thing, of course, will be to hear all the news, to give some and to hear some. The last days of Pompeii? Sure. Maybe I'll tell someone how the people left cool impressions on the walls. The Roman Empire? Finite. I could talk a little about Germanic hordes, then point a few noble Romans toward better sources. Someone could tell me how the ice caps fared, how the American experiment finally turned out, if the gray wolves made it, if anyone ever read anything I wrote, what happened to my brother's children, and to my last dog. But who knows if I'll be able to find anyone with my personal news. It will be a big room. I may have to settle for the cosmic. Did the Democrats ever reform health care? This poem dated quickly. Did the Democrats ever reform health care? How did we manage once fossil fuels ran out? I will not look for Shakespeare, no doubt at the center of a large crowd on one of the balconies. I will not hang out with Karl Rove alone at one of the bars, even when I go back to refill my glass. I will also not be polite if I see anyone I knew but didn't like. This is the end of the world we're talking about. I'll have risen from a very long wait in the grave, and no doubt will not be in the mood to have any more of my time wasted. If I meet a Viking, I may ask about the journey across the Atlantic in a longboat. If I happen upon my mother, I'll probably pose my few lingering questions about the cruelties she inflicted on me in childhood. But that's it. Mostly, I just want to know that we all made it out together, if not alive, and that we all can mingle in one large room, listening to a single four-piece, sipping really big drinks mixed by the angels. I guess I just want the assurance right now, before time goes even one bit further, that I'll get to come back at the very end, that I'll be filled in about all the things I missed, and that if, between this time and that one, there is anyone who I learned to love, I'll be able to find him there too. No doubt he'll be looking for me, expecting me by the fruit trays. When the lights dim and the barkeeps announce last call, angels will walk around with shawls and formal coats draped over one celestial arm, Inuit furs, togas, and muumuus over the other, and thank each guest for coming as we trudge back out to our coffins to buckle up snug before the colossally violent contraction that will be the end of the world. I will take my friend's hand and make one last pass at the hors d'oeuvres table. If he's a gentleman, he'll open my coffin and wait for me to get in before walking around to his own. I'd be happy then, I think, settling in, knowing that everything turned out all right. called bioluminescence, which what is the name for, anybody, science person, can help me? Creatures that sort of are biologically able to glow. I think jellyfish can do this. Some jellyfish can do this. So this poem is about bioluminescence, about living things that can glow, and it's sort of a thought experiment, right? Where you use a poem to imagine another situation, something that isn't but could have been. Bioluminescence. To attract prey or indicate fear, pain. It might well radiate from the chest, from within the bell of the ribs, slight at first, warming to flesh and pink, until at full bore, each gives off his own light, letting everyone see into the body, a single dark mass within the glow for the heart, tapering to gray where arteries thin. Summer nights around cities, humans pulse on, slowly and off, appearing and disappearing on sidewalks, illuminating around them their companions, drawing briefly moths, flies, the bugs reflecting the light like small meteors brushing past the sun. Couples might glimmer in sympathy, might warm together toward passion or wrath, or criticize each other for failing to get the timing right. Perhaps if some left turn in our history had demanded another mode of communication, we might glow when we cluster, to express safety, draw others. Families on porches kindling each other to brightness, except for an outcast teen who lingers alone near the car, marked only by the red dot of her cigarette. Or perhaps it would be something to control, a physical process seldom acknowledged, and a school-aged child might be sent to the nurse for it. Not to be scolded exactly, like the precocious girl in everyone's middle school who left class because she got her period, which, though secretly curious, we all laughed at. And how awful to have it pointed out that first time, before you noticed it yourself, that you were glowing. No doubt there would be hierarchies, brightness, color, how long you could hold your glow. It would play some unlikely role in mating. And perhaps, like our voices or the way we touch, it would be something else singular about us to be remembered as we fade, that those who love us most could differentiate in any dark. This poem, Sweet Orchard, is all about an apple orchard that I planted at my house, among other things. So I'm going to read some apple tree poems. The first apple tree poem I'm going to read is actually in 3 parts, a 3-part poem, and it's called Two Apples. And it begins with a description of a childhood memory, right, of a time, one of my first memories of eating an apple, and then the third panel switches ahead, kind of fast forwards 10 or 20 years. So this poem is called Two Apples. I remember eating an apple when I was young, like most people remember their first kiss. Red delicious, wine red, red and cut before my eyes into slices, splayed like a flower, as if the apple itself, the thickened petals of a certain rose, opened on the plate to a flesh bloom. I remember the taste of the first slice in my mouth, the living cinnamon, my small hand lifting the crescent to my lips, and then lifting another crescent, then another. Upstairs by the banister, the rails before my face like prison bars. I ate not 1 apple, but 2 or 3, more. Not a flower, but a mound, the pile of petals at the foot of a fallen rose. Not a 5-petaled apple flower, but the roses we have bred to be monstrous with petals. A child born with 8 or 10 fingers on each hand, waving them nervously in the crib. I ate till I was sick. and the brothers behind me burst into laughter. Then they began to fall out over who'd clean it up. 2. I went 15 years without eating an apple. Who else could say that but Eve? 15 years without the hard crunch that now I prefer above all things. The hardest of apples, the lifted flesh that leaves a wound glazed with juice. Even thinking about it now, I feel longing, a chilled Granny Smith, the tartness to the highest pitch of pleasure before pleasure turns, the belted note that would be a scream in any context other than song. It's been too long now, when it's been about 3 days, and yet once it was 15 years. I think of Eve among the crabs and wild species, after she'd been kicked out, after we had been. How all fruits must have been a pleasure to her, a privilege back then, before pesticides, before supermarkets. Unthinkable to have to wait for the fall to enjoy apples. But even then, in the world's first falls, in the autumnal wealth of squashes, now big with Abel and holding the hand of jittery Cain, she must have looked suspiciously at apple trees, their fruits clustered with a mysterious tightness to the branch. Knowledge merely of how this or that apple tasted, she must have told herself, ignoring the mother's intuition that if her womb could deliver a body of good, she already held the hand of evil. So maybe she went 15 years like me, interim informed by both good and evil, before she stretched her middle-aged bones to a laden limb, a bough bright with half-dozen apples, and plucked one and ate. Would the voice of God boom again from the heavens, the earth grown deep in its cavernous womb? Or maybe hers was another fear, that this was somehow that other tree, that she'd stumbled unawares back to the garden, and so now, after so much life, would be constrained to live even longer. 3. Jumps ahead. 3. A man was involved. Tall, thin, English, late 20s, long black hair and a ponytail. He gave me the fruit, and I was hungry, so I ate. I had just met him on Voorhees lawn, under a row of 100-year-old oaks, the manicured lawn with 3 rows of oaks, columns in a Greek temple, with a canopy of springtime green. I was just taking a walk. My friend Tiana dazzled among the oaks. She, tall, Nordic, cheekbones like shields on either side of her face. She was the goddess Nike, white victory, 19, with round hips and azure eyes. Tiana saw him and whispered, "I think he's cute. Do you think he's cute?" Then she walked up to where he sat against a tree, reading a small book, a moment later motioning me over with her hand. I didn't go until she called me, and then there was no polite way to refuse. Tiana flirted so easily that soon they were both flirting, and I was too, just laughing with them really. He invited us back to his dorm room, the 3 of us on the edge of his bed for hours. I sat quiet, listening to their chatter until it was evening, until it was nearly midnight. Then he asked, with his graduate student boldness, if I wanted to spend the night. He looked directly at me, full eye contact and a half grin. I don't recall ever saying yes. Tiana shrugged and lifted herself off the bed. She collected her things while I was stuttering to reply, and soon she was gone, passing soundlessly out of the room, white goddess, drifting away from mortals, leaving in silence the 3 of us, him, me, and the bright Granny Smith on his desk. I did see it there, but I would not have asked for it. It was then that he offered, picked it up, and held it out to me. And how could I refuse it from his hand? The next morning, I recall walking home through the oaks of Voorhees, light filtering through the canopy, a tiny human dwarfed in a temple of gods. I still didn't know what I had done, or why I had done it, or why it was exactly that I hadn't done it before. I'm just going to read a couple more poems. The next poem I'm going to read is part of my Afterlife series. And this poem is called Purgatory. Now, I should say, as a Jew, I don't have much of a sense of what purgatory actually involves. So this poem involves some guessing and some extrapolation on my part. So people who actually know can correct me later. Purgatory. In this version of the afterlife, I am forced to reenact every failed moment of my earthly existence until I get each one right, as adjudicated by a panel of cranky angels. They are not interested in my successful moments, which they largely take credit for. The failures began when I was small, even perinatal. I opened my mouth too soon, nearly drowning in amniotic fluid. The video pauses, and the angels shake their heads, knit their fingers on the long white table in front of them. Wings sag. Then, two burly Italians come over and shoulder me toward a dressing room in which I am forced to put on a wetsuit. The next hour is awful, as I must press my lips shut, despite jerking motion and the fascinating things I notice about my mother's birth canal. The studio audience laughs at my first few attempts, played for them on a large screen. The gurgle and sputter as amniotic fluid courses repeatedly into my gullet. But they applaud warmly when I finally make it through. On the wall above the angels, there's a big picture of me naked with a halo and wings. The angels nod approvingly, a bell sounds, and the toes on the picture light up. Then come other challenges. The pet turtle I killed by leaving it trapped in a milk crate in the July sun. Baked him in a shell, my brother said. And a year later, digging up said turtle in his Danish butter cookie tin. The spirit of the turtle watches dourly from the front row. The fire I caused by lighting up a failing report on Prince Henry the Navigator. Surprising, because I didn't think anyone knew about that. Also, because the angels seem indifferent to my failure to use more than one source. Some of my earthly errors continue to trip me up even after hours of attempts, so I'm allowed to call on other dead for help. Dickens reminds me to spend money on friends and to avoid work in counting houses. Lawrence coaches me on how to talk to my mother. Whitman seemed like a good choice to help with those moments I was unable to repress distaste for humanity, but finally he proves a little standoffish in his own right. After what feels like an eternity, the halo on the wall lights up too, and the audience cheers as a pair of wings descends to the stage. The angels majestically float over and take up positions, a few on each side of me. The audience goes wild now. Hosannas are sung. I get really excited too because somewhere off, I hear a car ignition and a drum roll begins to play. Then the angels raise their heavenly arms, balloons drop, and a brand new Toyota Camry, champagne on tan, keyless entry, slowly rolls onto the stage. And the best part, lover, is that you're there too, behind the wheel, still somehow with me after decades and decades. A near miracle after my catalog of missteps and miscalculations. The one thing I assuredly got right. And I'm just going to read one last poem. And this is an apple tree poem. This poem is I actually planted a small orchard in Ohio, and this poem is about not actually planting the orchard, but about right before I planted it. It's about imagining the orchard. The poem is called Adam's Punishment, and if anybody recalls, Adam's punishment is that he has to work for his food. He's got a few, right? Eve gets pain in childbirth, and Adam has to work for his food. So when I was thinking about planting an orchard, I was thinking that that really is part of Adam's punishment, right? That in Eve, apple trees just sprung up everywhere. In Eden, apple trees just sprung up everywhere. So this poem was called Adam's Punishment since it's about the work of planting an orchard. Through the kitchen window, over a sink full of yesterday's dishes, imagine. Morning, and you stand there, your robe slung lazily around you. Imagine the apple saplings on the first day after their planting. Framed by that window, newly wet in the April sunrise, 50 of them, shoulder to shoulder, straight as any Roman line. Their branches are bare, black, spindly, like letters typeset into the new day. Sticking up in 5 rows on the side field, they spell possibility, that same word over and over again. You start the water now and squeeze dish soap into the stream. Turn your attention back to the morning's tasks. Bubbles rise, cover the dishes, hot water rising under them. But no. No, you lift your head again. They are framed by everything, as if your life were mere context for a still life. Orchard through kitchen window. The back of your head, dishes, countertop, and cabinets, all are silhouetted, all contours lost in favor of what shines through the glass, owns every trace of its first exposure to sun. Each tree an antenna, picking up a signal from the sky, finding music pent in the clouds, which will now rumble its base under this earth. But there's no time for that this morning. You are not a silhouette. Your hands begin in clockwise motion around the rim of a dinner plate. The only music comes from the radio, half static from another room. So you move on with the dishes, stack plates, bowls. You dip the scrub pad back into the water. But it's no use, is it? The sun is up, fully up, and you can't avoid the arc of branches, how they reach skyward. So the trees become rows of children, forking their arms in a stretch. A teacher, somewhere off, guiding motions after a nap. All the knowledge, you think, all the good and evil in the world yet to unfold, unfurl in their heads. All those hands, you think, how their work will blossom into clusters, how their work will eventually be ready for the hands of the world. Or the trees are magicians, you think, that might pull anything from their sleeves. Handkerchiefs, rabbits, flowers, doves rising up, filling the air above the bare branches. Or apples. They're magicians who can find 25 years of bright apples hidden in the white ruffles at their forearms. With peat, water, and sun, apples enough to blanket this acre of earth. In a moment, you will reach in your hand and lift the stop. Hear dirty water drain. It will be time to move on because you are no silhouette, because life requires you to work so that you can eat. But for now, you look out the window and imagine the trees and imagine the pleasure of planting them yourself. What could the Old Testament or any testament have to compare to that? Thank God, you think. Thank God we are mortal. Sometimes after poetry readings, people take questions if anybody has any or responses or anything. So I'll see if anybody has any questions.
Right over here.
Oh, sure.
What would you say is your main inspiration to write poetry?
You know, I think I think for me, it's very much about I guess a few different things. Hard to say one thing, but you know, I think about the importance of the imagination and sense of humor. You know, everybody has things in life that they have trouble dealing with, right? I mean, everybody does, and I think those are sort of, you know, behind it, definitely. But for me, it's how the difficult stuff, you know, can be combined with different things to see, different ideas or imagination. You know, like what? So example, right? So obviously, you know, I'm afraid of dying, right? It's all over the poems. But a way I can make that a little easier is by imagining the afterlife using the imagination and using my sense of humor in a way that helps me deal with it. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I think for me it's about imagination and humor and how that can provide a filter for things.
I just want to say I was waiting for your books to come in, and when they did, I was leaping through and reading them and reading Sweet Corner Orchard. And I just want to say that I read certain poems, and I said, I bet he'll read that one, I bet he'll read that one, I bet he'll read that one. And you did 3 out of 3 of my picks.
Oh, is there anything that okay, well, that's pretty good. Do you have a question?
Yeah, is there a particular setting that you find so easy for you to write, that you enjoy writing the most?
Well, you know, I don't know about for y'all, but I've heard people say that writers, especially poets, do best in early morning or late at night because, you know, when you're involved in the business of the day, it's really hard to get your mind in that place of freedom, that place where you can free associate and let your imagination go. But early mornings, before the day started yet, or at night, your tasks are over. So for me, it's more important the time of day, you know? I go to the gym late at night because it's the only time I can go. So I'm usually there at like 9:30 and there's nobody else there. And I'll just be sitting on a bench like writing a poem because I finished my stuff for the day and my mind is free to associate. Or as opposed to anywhere else in the middle of the day, I'm thinking, shoot, where do I gotta be at 5 o'clock? You know? So I think it's about finding a place where your imagination can be free.
In your own words, what is poetry? What would you define poetry?
You know, I think it's hard to say one definition. You know, it could be anything. You know, different people find different ways to make it an art. For me, I think poetry is about words that can translate experience to the reader. Like, I don't know if y'all had this effect, but if you asked me what I wanted my poems to do, I would want y'all who are listening tonight to be able to see something, or to imagine a cocktail party, or a game show host, or a game show as the afterworld, or to imagine a world in which people glow from the middle. Like, so for me, a poem is something which gives you a picture in your head that I had in my head, except does it with words. I think maybe music does a similar kind of thing, maybe not with a picture, but with a feeling. So yeah, I don't know. Does that what you think? That make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really hard question. If somebody asked me a question like had a gun to my head and said I had to answer it, I think they'd just be looking for an excuse to shoot me, because that's a really hard question. That's all right, no gun.
How old were you when you started writing poetry?
I was very young. I was actually like 6 or 7 years old, and my mother has poems that she hauls out on holidays. I wrote when I was like 8, and it's very embarrassing. But there are lots of poets like Thomas Hardy. He was a novelist, but he didn't write his first poems until he was in his 60s. So I don't think you have to start writing young to be a poet. I think if that's something that you think you might like to do, you know, you could write your first poem tomorrow and really discover it in yourself. Yeah. So, any other questions?
I have one. I teach literature here, and I'm always helping my students. We look at the writer's life in relation to the poetry, and I know that we shouldn't cross too many boundaries, and we shouldn't take too many leaps. But what would you say to people, because you know, as I do, that many of our students are a bit afraid of poetry when they start to read the classics, and they don't, and they have commonly anthologized poems. And so what would be your suggestion of where the two should meet, the writer's life and the influence on the text?
Well, you know, I think that there's a lot of, this is one of those questions, right, that there's lots of answers and probably no right one. For myself, I think that, you know, that we have that boundary. You know, we say that you're not supposed to connect a writer's life to a poem. And you know, part of the reason we do that, I think, because any art is always, you know, involves picking and choosing from reality, always involves a kind of mythologizing of the self. But I think that part of the fun of reading poetry is that these figures come alive for us. Like any of you all read Walt Whitman in your classes? Some of y'all maybe. Like, so he was, you know, 19th century poet, great poet. He used to ride on buses in New York, and he used to, supposedly, he would like declaim Homer at the top of his lungs. And I think stuff like that, you know, studying poets becomes like studying superheroes or something. Like, you know, their personalities tie into their work. And so for me, it's a really fun way to make these people real. Do you?
Oh, I agree. I think
Yeah.
I probably lean too heavily on it. I think that the poetry is very much informed by the writer. So I always try to pull
Yeah.
myself back and say, wait a second, let's not take too many leaps here. Let's not make too many assumptions.
Well, you know, I think probably the influence of T.S. Eliot and all his personal stuff that he had to protect makes us more careful than we probably should be. You know, and I think people, you know, people who, you know, I mean, yeah. I think as his influence fades, we'll feel less and less burdened by that need to see a poem so divorced. Yeah.
Do a lot of your poems come from memories or from prior experiences in your life? Most
Yeah.
of them, or
A lot of them. I mean, you know, there's always some personal feeling, but even personal biography. You know, the poem I read, Two Apples, kind of a long poem, but it does, right? That actually, my brothers, you know, I have 3 older brothers, and when you have older brothers, you know, the most fun thing you can do is to make your younger brother cry, right? I mean, that's like a hobby. And
I think it comes with, you know, it's in the criteria of keynote.
it is. My brothers had this. My brothers were really into science fiction, and they had this club called the Secret Force. And to be a Secret Force member, one of the criterion is Secret Force members don't feel pain. So, you know, my brothers had to hit me in the shoulder, and if it didn't hurt, I could be a Secret Force member. But it always hurt. Anyway, so brothers do things like that. So my brothers at one point fed me some apples to make me sick, and I did not eat apples for 15 years. Apples are my favorite thing to eat now. I planted an apple orchard. But the poem does what poems do, which is take something biographical and try to make it mythical. Try to tie it into a story that makes it more than just me talking about my problems, but a story that feels like it has some cultural relevance. So it doesn't always work, but that's the goal. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one last question.
Okay, one last
from
question.
me anyway. You kind of, based on what your question was, do you take a lot of poetic license when you talk about your life, or are you truthful?
No, I take license where I need to take it. Wherever you need to take it, yeah. Because I feel like, you know, at some point, you know, a poem starts being a public document, and the reader doesn't care if it's biographically true. They just care if it means something to them. So at some point, that becomes more important than whatever concerns I have. Well, thank you all so much for listening, and I'm excited to hear
The next piece we're going to play is titled Caliente by Christopher Colendo.
Oregon +1 today.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Morgan DeSuze. I'm a student here at Tunxis, and I would like to share a couple poems with you that have reflected upon my life at one time or another. The name of this poem is called Me. I stay in the shadows, away from society, wondering why I always have anxiety. I am alone, but yet I have nothing to fear. I will stay focused regardless. Oh wait, I'm sorry. For all I need is me to steer me clear. I will stay focused regardless of what I have to overcome. I will hold my head up high despite of everyone. I tried my hardest to be social and humble and sweet, but I collide with arrogance, leaving me dry and beat. One day I will make it to the top and forget everyone, while all I have is me, just good old number one. Okay, this next poem is called The Beauty Within Books. I did not like books, I did not know why. Books articulate colors as bright as the sky. I now see colors, basic but bright, wondering before why I only seen night. So I'll read to the end. Books will color my sky, so I'll read to the end. I now see blue, yellow, and red, but I'll see more in the end. This last poem is called Ambition. I read this last year on Peace Day, and it's a really inspiring poem, so I'd like to share with you. I am climbing a mountain, the top is not near. I am climbing a mountain, and I will not fear. I am climbing a mountain, very slippery and steep. I slipped down the mountain, but got back on my feet. I'm climbing this mountain, I wonder if I'll ever reach the top. I'm climbing this mountain, perhaps I should not. I'm climbing this mountain, I hope I do not fall. I'm climbing this mountain, aren't we all? Thank you.
Seba usually likes to go first.
Hi, my name is Seba, and I am in a public speaking class, and I would like to share with you guys a poem that I love from Pablo Neruda, and it is called If You Forget Me. I want you to know one thing. You know how this is. If I look at the crystal moon, at the red branch of the slow autumn at my window, if I touch near the fire the impalpable ash, or the wrinkled body of the log, everything carries me to you. As if everything that exists, aromas, light, metals, were little boats that sail toward the isles of yours that wait for me. Well now, if little by little you stop loving me, I shall stop loving you, little by little. If suddenly you forget me, do not look for me, for I shall have already forgotten you. If you think it long and mad, the wind of banners that passes through my life, and if you decide to leave me at the shore of the heart where I have roots, each hour you feel that you are destined for me with implacable sweetness. If each day a flower climbs up to your lips to seek me, ah, my love, my own, in me, all that fire is repeated. In me, nothing is extinguished or forgotten. My love feeds on your love, beloved, and as long as you live, it will be in your arms without leaving mine. Thank you.
Very much. We have Herbie Brown here. Herbie's going to treat you to a little bit of a poetry/rap performance. So. Kind of.
Alright, so my name is Herbie. Alright, and this is about dreams. And first I want to say that if you have a dream, you should hold on to it and do everything you can to protect it, because if you don't do it, then no one else will. Alright, so here it is. It's called Dreams. I have a dream that seems so impossible, it makes teachers and family members doubtful. A dream where I could be anything, as free as an eagle, and my freedom will not be held down by the opinions of these people. I can do anything and be anyone, because what most people don't have, I have plenty of. And with my heart and desire to live a better life, I will start to inspire those who are willing to fight, because your willpower is but the spark of the fire, which is only part of the higher power who's truly in charge. And don't listen to the words of these fools who will decide which life you will choose and tell you who will win and who will lose, because everyone is equal. Man is corrupt, power is evil, and those who claim to be higher up are deceitful. For true power resides in what the text writes, and death is not the end, but rather the sequel to the next life. I dream of living with no struggle. When you look into my eyes, you won't see the trouble, but the soul of a man who has been humble, but now on the right path, who will occasionally stumble, but will always bounce back. And this is my life without a soundtrack, so I deserve a new start. This is the new edition supplying nutrition to your soul with words from the heart. And no one is invincible. What we say will leave people hurt and scarred. And every day I pray that you will take heed to what I say. And to prove I don't ramble, I'll lead by example and portray the pros of working hard. For life is too short to live negative, and I'm trying to make the best of it. And we're supposed to love our neighbor as if they were our relative, but there are some people who act in spite despite their moral elements. Backstabbing best friends, doing anything they can to get an edge. They will push you over the ledge and lead you to negligence. And all of this takes place in our heads, so there's no evidence. And those people, they're irrelevant. Just broken hearts, moving with no direction, lacking affection, so they influence our perception. So they influence our perception, highlighting our imperfections behind a false disguise of someone who cares. So when everything is all said and done, our hearts will be broken, just like theirs. So hold on to your dreams because they're so fragile and delicate. And remember, you can't fix a broken heart, but start with what's left of it. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Herbie.
What's up, everybody? My name is Dan, but when it comes to hip-hop and everything related to hip-hop, my name is Average Citizen. I'm going to do a couple of things for you, a cappella. This first one here I wrote, it's called Dignity, and it's basically about, I look at a lot of artists who pretty much, sell themselves short or sell out, if you will, to be a part of, a major label or something. And this is just me kind of saying that I don't want anything to do with that. So here we go. I'll rip in half the contractual obligation, fax your confirmation. Lacking cooperation, I'm back with ideation, forming and relating thoughts that aren't new, they're just asleep. So I'll give them a shock or two. Don't be a cockatoo, mimicking visuals when you can't tell the clones from individuals. Cause I remember when I wanted to be famous, but then I have to pay the price of being shameless and pretending that life is peaches and cream. Whoever told you that? I'd say he preaches a dream. How many MCs will we let switch teams? I'm here to break off your get-rich schemes, improve living, cause I wanna be my own investor, not a song and dance face-painted court jester. Should I play a part for some dead presidents? I'd rather feed a few underfed residents of any pigment, and this is no exaggeration. I'm not a figment of anyone's imagination. Laugh at a fabrication of how you sprayed a gat, cause I'm like Damon Wayans, homie, don't play that. But I'm not performing at your lame parties, sugar-coated plastic wrap like a pack of Smarties. I'll tell you what you need to hear. This ain't people pleasing. Average Citizen brings the rhyme and the reason. That was one right there. How many of you guys heard of Occupy Wall Street? Everything that's been going on the past couple weeks. Anyone aware of that? When I first learned about this through a friend of mine, there's like a website about the 99% and that whole thing right there, I felt inspired to write something about it. And I actually got a chance to do it at Occupy Hartford on Sunday. I was at the campsite there and I got a chance to do this. So this is called the 99%. I want to march with those who occupy Wall Street, but I'm sitting here reading my friend Paul's tweet. See, I'm the illest, like somebody who eats raw meat, and reality proves that the law will defeat its own purpose. They're nervous, cause we assemble, shaking their shoes, so to hide the fact that they tremble, send cops to stop us. A bogus justification. They won't admit that they betrayed the trust of the nation, pushed to the edge, so we exercise the right. Well, we don't need a document to tell us we can fight, cause it's a given. Come on, who wants to be violated? Taken for granted and feeling annihilated. They have the nerve to tell us that we're out of line, while they pillage the Middle East like a liquid gold mine, and they state this is freedom. What a paradox. Ain't that the reason some don't even own a pair of socks? But the images that New York and Egypt provided prove global unity, even though we are divided. Geography won't stop the tactics enacted, because every last parasite will be extracted. They say they're upholding the law. If that were the case, they'd have to spray their own face with their own can of mace and handcuff themselves. Rain blows on each other, not the homeless, single, teenage mother. And though physically absent, spiritually I'm by their side. We'll give them a chance for redemption, and then we ride. And when future generations ask how it went, we'll say the victory was ours, the 99%. The 99%, the 99%. We are the solution, the 99%. Thank you.
Mike, you want to follow that one?
Give me a microphone. What they did. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Snow. Just to tell you, I'm 26. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut. And I'm a student at Tunxis studying criminal justice and communication. This poem that I'm reading today is titled Fear. The inspiration behind my poem comes behind one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Michael Jordan, where he said, fear is only an illusion. Fear is only an illusion. That's what one of the greatest basketball players of all time said. So that's the attitude I take now as I move forward ahead. I had fears, a few more when I was younger, but my biggest fear is not being the best big brother. To my mother who's in the crowd, I love you. To my mother who's in the crowd, I love you. For you are the one who always said, besides God, no one is above you. To my girlfriend, the one that I adore, who holds my heart, I just let you know I'll turn the TV down a little more so we can talk. When it comes to protecting my family, fear is not an option I choose. Afraid of never being successful on this road. Well, excuse me. That being said, it's only the light in the mood. When it comes to protecting my family, fear is not an option to choose. Afraid of never being successful on this road, I felt lost. So I rolled back into Tunxis after taking some years off. And somewhere along the semester, my fear was lost and replaced with a job of controlling my own destiny where I was the boss. So as I give you food for thought, digest it with your meal. Will you let fear control you again after knowing it's not real? Because as a Leo, and like a lion, I'll roar. Because I could put the microphone down and say it clear. That I'm no longer afraid of fear. I'm no longer afraid of fear.
Hi, my name is Aaron. I wrote a poem with a friend of mine. It's a senryu. It's a type of haiku that's ridiculous. It's not meant to make sense, so don't feel bad if you don't get it. Okay. Hey Apple, you're red. Can I have a cheeseburger? I want it right meow. Thank you.
So that's my pen name. And actually, that name was given to me by a Korean monk that I go to visit on Saturdays when I can. I've been doing a lot of meditation lately in the last couple of years, and she gave me that name, so I decided to when I got my book published, actually. So a lot of poetic license here, like I don't want my name attached to everything because people make judgments, you know. It's all about that fear he was just talking about. So I still have a lot of that, hence the pen name. But yeah, I keep this life very separate from my real life because a lot of this comes from my past. Some of it's a little dark, but I'm going to read for you just a couple shorter poems, and hopefully there'll be some inspiration. Okay, the first poem I'm going to read is called Expired Trinkets. Death follows right behind you, tiptoes he's creeping. Spy when he must, you might even be sleeping. Gleaming he's knowing you fell and are stuck. Even the tough are out of luck. As your pain gets deeper, out steps the reaper. Into your dreams he settles you. So unclear, wallowing, denying our fear. Haunting, taunting, he's lurking, he's stalking. Don't listen if he comes a-knocking. You hum those sweet prayers, those nursery rhymes, anything peaceful to pass the time. This distraction might work for a minute or two, but what now should you do when your senses are triggered to the drug's sweet intoxication, speaking straight to your disease, bringing you down to your knees? You ain't going on no airplane, train, or bus, so there's no need to rush. Because this ain't no ticket. The only road it leads to is nowhere. So make these expired trinkets. Busy bees, hustle, bustle. Shadow government's got us under a muzzle. Sugar, caffeine, booze, nicotine. Jesus, we're not too far off from machines. Enslaved to remain alert, focused, and productive. After all, fuck our health, this is all for the sake of mass consumption. Wish I had something prophetic to say, but the soma they give disrupts my creative bay. Until then, I'll just be here maintaining our hive while the queen bee rests and hides. They call it the rat race, what a disgrace. Good old US of A left long ago, now divided we stand, working our tails off to feed the man. Now we're in so much debt and turmoil, we've lost our land. We're brought to our knees, too distracted by Kanye West, Lady Gaga, and Black Eyed Peas. All right, this is called Question the Feed. So caught up inside the feed, I think I forgot how to plant a seed. Screaming, shouting, all day reacting, making my ears bleep and bleed. Think it's too much? Are you tired enough? Sick of the arson's aching needs? Sick of stalking, haunting, talking? Facebooks, iTunes, cyber games, email. Where and when such a lonesome trail? Campfires, home cookies, and scary ghost tales. Real rock heroes that didn't involve a spaced out kid by the TV set. Cradling that placebo guitar with multicolored buttons disguised as a fret. Art shows writing letters in fountain pen, not typing all alone in a dingy old den. Manual cameras and films in the park, developing pictures, enjoying the mysterious room of the dark. Picture hues manifesting so natural and true. Now with Photoshop art, little Johnny can tell you just where to start. So remember where you came from the next time you're cruising the net, because you never know when your mind gets spent. A blessing. This is a prayer and a blessing to free an angel trapped in an addict's withered body. May your will be thine, may your truth be known. Enlighten us with honor and the value of respect. May your universe become our only craving when the days get long and lazy. May you open up our minds to the peaceful kind, to nature, beauty, and balance that once we left behind. The gift of giving from your cup to mine keeps us living with the divine, so selfishly as you wade in our sea of unfulfilled desires feeding on our misery. You wipe each and every tear, take away all our fears. Yet when we walk out in the dark, not conscious of the warmth you spark. We disrupt that very moment. The safety that you've given me, please don't let me forget. For if I do things my own way, I know I'll have regrets. This thing called faith you've helped me perceive will never ever leave. That is why I know and trust the joy I truly feel. This flowing light, it must be real because I've given up the fight. You gave us eyes to see, and so we let it be. You gave us ears to listen, and so now we heard. Now I pray for understanding, guidance in your word. I now declare for all to hear that I am willing to be blessed, and turn my will to you, O Lord, because you are the best. I am grateful for recovery, because now I finally see. You've intervened, I don't know how, but I've accepted anyhow. This is where I'm meant to be. Oh, and if anybody's interested, I have copies of my book. You can get a business card, or if you want to buy a book, you can. It's also available online on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So thank you. Fearless Expressions, a time for us.
Poetry is my faith and my religion, and my chore, and my difficulty, and my joy. This is entitled, A Fury That Is Love Pronounces Verse. I look into my core enfolding heart, the folds being nothing but its words, and enter into silence only a heart makes, and syllables quieter than a pulse, softer than life, find their way back beyond their birth, and hold new hands of poems still their kin, and ride out the beating sun and pouring sky, and laugh beyond the laughter I can muster. There is a greater laughter readier than tears. There is a sound the world makes when it sleeps, and all of these movements we can remember before they happen, and each defends the syllables it likes. Now, nonsense demands a soapbox for the hour, but poetry won't let it take the stage. If poems are bolder than nonsense, what can they not defeat? Yet, not being as brave as poems, I hesitate to answer that. This poem is about shamans. Shamans find lost soul parts and connect them back to the soul. A part of me now severed finds its way. There are people who supposedly can look for the lost parts in us and hook them back in place, but I am thinking now that sometimes these pieces have wills of their own and either find their way back home or move on to journey by themselves, quietly or loud, troubled or free. A part of me, now severed, finds its way into a song, and so I rendezvous with different verses and melodies, hopeful that I'll locate this jigsaw piece of spirit, this color of my inner eye, this wisdom tooth of soul space, whatever the hell it is. It's something I really can't name, but I think it fair to say what it is not. It isn't a bone or an organ or vein. It isn't even a thought or memory, but it has a rhythm I forget so easily at times until it remembers me. It rides the various winds where it decides to sit. It perches on skyscrapers or country trees. It's a space between image and harmony, the spouse of my heart in exile and rejoined to me as it sees fit. It will not fit here readily, but I come closer to its breath as I measure out these words. I mustn't surrender to each whim of this part, but I do need to forgive it its vagaries. It has or is the wetness of tears, the gap within silence. I forge away when it forgets me. I pray for a long holiday when it remembers. I sit as peacefully as I can, recalling it. This is entitled Reflections on a Recent Cloister. Recently, I've been shutting myself in a room and writing poetry. I have hidden myself in the romance between brights and shadows, conquered an anthill, evicted even the fifth column of my own ants who find a natural kinship there. It is not that I care if I have a permit to do this. Well, I care a little, but this hill is mine. Tomorrow may bring someone else seizing it and punctually deporting me, but for now, I'm the minor league monk, the abbot of incandescent minutiae. The roll call is easiest when it's just me, though I welcome visits, even find dreaming impossible without them. For at least this season, I'll keep watch here, whether it lasts a reasonable stay or one lengthy beyond mercy. The cloister without a walk, this hiddenness that shouts to those who know me and keeps a hush with strangers, this portable, well-guarded leap day that outfoxes all calendars, wishing to pin it down, this tenure without location or school, this home base that stands apart from the heart, asks for everyone's patience, if not their patronage. May I be of service even from a distance. May I light a candle for all brothers as well as for myself. May we sip alone and together from the stream that is this verse where we ever alight, ever tend, ever fish. This shelter is my hope, if not my home. I'll just read one more poem. Thank you. One more poem is for my daughter, who's out there somewhere. It's entitled "A Summing Up Each Day." If I could say to my daughter that every point of light is a thought for her well-being, and the span of colors before us a refraction of my love, if I could say this in a better way, or maybe not say it, but be a servant to my voice, that can say these things more precisely. I would live and breathe and die and be reborn each day, a brighter point of light, a fuller span of hues, a man wealthier in what sense each of us must borrow, as all knowledge is borrowed, despite our efforts to make it our own, or anyone else's, to make wisdom witherable and human. Though that which withers, all understanding and lore and human voice, and human wisps and hair and skin tone and disposition, and pains and joys in all their kaleidoscope of apparent patterns, all that fades is the garb of a greater pattern, an impossible yet truer love. And all I cannot say, but stumble willingly to tell, can be given if she can catch the light that does not stumble, the light in the corner of my eye that catches all I may not be yet, am allowed to see. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Jesse. We have two more speakers, Tasia and Justin Perez. Whoever wants to come up first. Justin? He's still working. And then I'd like to ask, are you going to play a duet? Or we have a little more, some more music. I don't know if Kevin's around or... I'll turn it over, and then we can all just grab some dessert.
Hi, my name is Justin Perez. I want to read this letter from a prisoner who went to prison as a boy and came out a man. Imagine being in a dark hole. Family and friends are barely visible and they cannot see you. Everything you loved, everything you cherished has vanished in the abyss. This includes all the good and the sinful, heinous, and atrocious possessions you assumed was dear to you. Darkness upon darkness. Light is but a memory, a dream that rarely comes. Suddenly, the darkness is extinguished, and light splendors his rays where darkness resided. This is my apotheosis. I began serving in the United States Marine Corps at age 17 to escape being a statistic, only to become one anyways at 19. The glamorous life of clubs, cars, jewelry, women, and drugs was my definition of living. That was paradise. My paradise soon turned to hell when this life led to my incarceration. It wasn't until the last year of a 3-year sentence that reality settled in. I wasn't living, I was merely existing. A vessel mechanically programmed to adhere to the majority of what teenagers were doing in my neighborhood. Subsequently, change became inevitable. After a crucial breakup from someone I loved dearly, self-awareness and spiritual guidance began dominating my desires. I started questioning myself. What was wrong with me? What was it about me that made her leave? I wasn't abusive, nor was I unfaithful. These questions necessitated answers. My quest for truth landed me to Islam, a religion of peace, equality, love, and joy, contrary to the stereotype imposed by the media. Through Islam, I found the answers I was looking for with new questions to ask. This time, it wasn't about me. These questions consisted of, how can I help others? What can I do to inform people that not all felons are bad people? How can Islam be portrayed as a religion of peace as opposed to suicidal bombers and militant, pervasive doctrines that so many people believe Islam conveys? Now that I'm 23 and days away from release, I will be able to witness the fruits of my works, the product of practicing patience and understanding the actions and thought process of others. Being able to connect with these people because I once walked in their shoes. A drug dealer, a robber, an addict, a teenager, a Marine, a prisoner, and now a Muslim, longing for peace of mind and the uplifting of others who are trapped in a cycle of not wanting to become greater. A Puerto Rican American who knows 3 languages and working on the 4th. Someone once told me that with power, you have the decision to do good or evil. In every story, fable, tale, and event, evil ultimately loses. So what choice do I have if victory is my goal? Anxious to get back and excited about facing the unknown, I am nervous about the blessing of being released. In the past, no matter how much I tried to disguise it, the way I was headed led to 2 things, jail or death. But the point is, I knew that, and I was content with that. Surprisingly, I don't view prison as a punishment. Due to the lifestyle I chose to live, prison became a last resort before death reaped my soul. This was God's way of giving me an ultimatum. I never had the aspiration to live a teenage normal life. Senior proms in high school sports was a waste of time. At 14, I was introduced to a life of crime. At 16, I decided to leave my mother's house because of her strict rules. I only graduated high school so that she could get off my back. If only I knew that what I deemed as nagging was in truth advice to keep me from having this fate I now have. I always had great parents who never gave me a cold shoulder. It was my pride and my desire to live a certain way that disrupted any hope for aid. The help was always there, I just never reached for it. Even in the military, what occupied my mind was having a good time, which included getting high, hurting other people, and making money by any means necessary. Eventually, this too caught up with me, because I was kicked out of the Marine Corps with a bad conduct discharge. This attitude carried on with me to prison. Stamps, cigarettes, and food was currency. Inmates were at war with each other for respect and money. I didn't belong here. It was like a domestic cat being dropped in the jungle. I was terrified, but I soon went from the domestic cat to a wild cheetah. This only worsened the situation. Along with this, the friends I thought I had abandoned me. No siblings, no friends, only mom and dad, and even with that, I was ungrateful. Sadness turned to anger. A person enclosed behind fences for 2 years with only anger to feel doesn't produce any good. However bad this all seems, these heinous acts and angry outlashes aided in my transformation. I started seeing the end of the road, and I didn't like what I was seeing. I feel like this had to happen to get where I am now. Blacksmiths must heat, melt, bend, cut, and beat on metal to produce the desired result. Diamonds undergo many stages before it is beautifully displayed in a piece of jewelry that may one day bring joy to somebody. Now with a newfound faith as a Muslim, who knows what's in store? Not only do I have to face the biased opinions people have towards fellas, I also have to confront the controversial stereotypes society has on Muslims. Not to mention the well-known pressure of reverting back to the glamorous life that 99% of everyone I know are still living. This doesn't mean I'm not ready to take this task. It's simply a challenge to do the right thing, abstain from the wrong, become a productive member of society, and help others to do the same. I was my problem, and by the grace of God, I will become my solution. Furthermore, doing good upon release isn't a concern I muster. The burden lies in keeping the determination and motivation to continue on. Will I become bored? Am I strong enough to keep saying no to dislike actions that are frowned upon by God Most High and society, while it's depriving myself of benefits? It's easy to begin something, but can I remain consistent when it seems hopeless, boring, and overwhelming? I do not know what the future holds, but I do know that if I turn to God with sure knowledge, certainty, love, sincerity, submission, truthfulness, and acceptance, He will not fail me. There's a quote from the Bible that says, "The Lord is my light and salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" And the Quran says, God will give you another blessing which you love, help from God and a near victory, and give glad tidings to the believers. My former way of living failed because I relied on myself. I know that the one who created me did not do so only to allow me to be destroyed, but He also created me with choice. If I want success, victory, and joy, then I must first acknowledge Him. If I want destruction, then I can persist in my past daily activities. Strong are not those who can overcome an army with strength. Strong are those who overcome their own selves. Sheep are only led astray by their wandering off, or by the shepherd they follow. In the midst of battle, pain and discomfort brings realization that life is still intact, a reminder that you're still alive. As long as I still have a breath to take, there's still time to make things right. Why wouldn't I want to make things right? I have approximately 100 years compared to eternity. I mean, what if the fire of hell is real? Am I willing to take that chance? In the past, I viewed life as a sequence of events to serve my desires. No matter what I did, it had to benefit me, whether it be satiation of my pleasure or monetary gain. Because of prison, I'm now able to see beyond that. Life is more than flesh and bones, materialistic possessions that will fade away into nothingness. I once heard a line while watching television in prison. This quote breached past the intoxication at that time. Are you living, or are you merely existing? Me, I want to live. I can't do that if I'm behind these barbed wires. So the only option I truly have is to stay away from the things that will bring me back here. Thank you.
I'm Tasia, and I have a horrible habit of turning up at these things without anything prepared, so I always end up writing something, just before I have to read it. So I ended up writing a couple of things, and I think they came out a bit interesting, so I hope you like them. Not have time to think of any names. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay. Remember, I first found you smoking tea leaves like a pipe dream on a steam train from Australia to Berlin. I'd like to think that once it made you smile. You know, the ashes having fallen into spirals, burning patterns on your skin. The train stops every now and then, and one conductor or another starts to tell you this is not a smoking car. Well, like hell it isn't. It's a sleeper lying dormant at the bottom of the deep. And all the others riding with you sometime since have died. Their teeth have twisted off the beetle star and stained your hands with smog. We kept them lucid long enough to dust the mantle down. The chimney likes to undulate and cough into the waves. And it is cold, and cold, and cold. You see, the heat beneath the charterhead is sleek and blue and gray, and Haunch's city is bend beneath the engines, and the entrails fling our galaxies apart, and chamomile fog encapsulates the whistle sound. before it comes to port, nestled in some strange planet's rings. And this one I wrote as something to my dad after he did that one for me. It's my dad over there. It's cool. It's pretty cool. This is for him. My father snaps his eyes around a room and blinks until it volunteers its meaning. He stirs at bowls of stuff until they gel and lose their flavor, and he starts at things that never come to pass. Sometimes I think that I should say to him to stop. But do you know the important thing is to move and keep on moving until one day there's nothing else to do. There's nothing, I can't read my own handwriting. Because nothing is worth stopping for save happiness, and someone taught me that.
Thank you. I can't believe the talent. We could go on.